Good morning. First of all, I want to just announce at the front of the video that Tuesday at I think it's 1 p.m. Central is I want to confirm with him one more time over the weekend that Ethis Asher will be live with me on my YouTube channel, and we are going to talk about lore and all the questions I'm having as I go through ARR for the first time as somebody who's done Shadowbringers first. And so I've been playing this whole time, so I've grabbed little like snippets, and so I'm just like, well, where does this matter? Who is this? Why is our character responding in that way? Why are these two characters interacting in that way? What is going on with these entities? Really basic questions, and so I found one of the leading experts of 14 lore to answer my super basic questions. And so he agreed to come on, and we're gonna have a good time out of that. With that out of the way, I want to talk about professions. I put out my initial impressions of kind of the 14 crafting system as it has been changed this expansion. And I think, there's probably a number of people here who either haven't touched professions in 14, haven't touched professions in WoW, doesn't play one of those games, etc. And so I wanted to talk about some of the key differences between professions, because this is another one of those areas where the games are starkly different. They don't really have a lot of overlap. Yes, there is like a tailor and a weaver and a leatherworker and a leatherworker. And so there's some naming that's the same, because you have a plate armor person and you would need to make plate armor. And so the blacksmith and the armorer should do that. But beyond just really basic naming convention, they function inherently differently. And it comes down to really mostly based in one key moment decision. What does the profession mean to our character? In Final Fantasy, it's the one that has the deeper system by far. Your interaction with crafting and gathering is that is its own job, its own class. It has its own gear, it has its own leveling, it has its own abilities, it is its own thing, and on your character you switch onto it. That is possible because your character is already in the habit of switching jobs among your battle classes. In WoW, you would have to literally switch to another character for that, and so it is immediately considered a secondary system that your person does in their full battle gear with their full battle weapons equipped, outside of there's fishing rods and stuff. But as a general rule, most crafting is done on just characters. Oh, my priest makes all my cloth goods. Oh, my warrior makes all my potions, or whatever. And you only get two, to make sure that everybody does a little of everything, which is a very big difference with 14, which says, everybody can be everything. No. And there's some specializations that have taken place in the past where there are choices made, but as just a general introduction, you're going to get to try all the crafting. And you're going to get to try all the desynthesis, which is what each crafter each crafter has a skill in breaking things down. So when you break down some mage's robes you found in a dungeon, it's your weaver's desynthesis skill that determines what happens. Does it drop? Does it level up your desynth? It's 100% chance it's going to do something positive. It's just up to your weaver desynthesis skill to determine where that goes. WoW doesn't really have anything that breaks gear down like that. They've done individual expansion style systems, and enchanters break gear down into enchanting materials, but that's really it. It doesn't function in that way. So in WoW, you only get two, and that includes gatherers in that. So if you pick miner, that's a slot. If you pick botanist, herbalist, right? Those are the same words. That's your other slot. You're a dual gatherer. There is no crafting on that character, period. There's secondary professions below that, which is where first aid used to live, archaeology, which isn't supported by current expansions but still lives, and fishing and cooking. Everybody gets those, so that's culinarian and fisher, but those systems are meant to support every character in a very different way. And so your primaries, you're just choosing two, and that's it. And what happens is, as games age, you eventually have to ask new players to get into current systems to level up through all previous systems. And so the games address that in different ways. Final Fantasy introduced this expansion. The current, as of today, that's what we're talking about, introduced basically a Encourage Unlock style event. We are rebuilding an old city, and that is important, I guess, that sort of thing. It is. And so we're going to rebuild this city, and we've done it over a series of phases, and crafters and gatherers contribute in their own way, and that is for all levels. And so it grants incredible experience. They've also gone and improved abilities, and they've gone and improved some interactions that were in those systems that made it feel like you had to like kind of be good at everything before you could be good at anything, and kind of overwhelmed new players. And so they made it really, really attainable. And it's very quick to level. And then at the end, there's expert crafting, and there's some in-game currencies you can earn by like doing trade-ins, and you know there is a system that takes place at the end, but the path has been slimmed down, and then you're just getting gear along the way, either by other crafters, or you're buying it off of vendors, or you're buying it from other players, or you're getting it from your class quests, because just like battle jobs would have quests, your classes have quests, and they kind of tell you this story. When you get into the current expansion, things start to get shared. They start to group those, and that was so they could have a better narrative experience. But the gear is very shareable. So if you have a piece of crafter gear or gatherer gear, you get to use it on all your crafters or all your gatherers. So if you level up, mining all the way to cap, and you keep every piece of gear you may have acquired along the way, only that mining pick and your secondary tool, your I don't remember what it is, like a chisel or something, those are the only two things that are unique to miners. Everything else, your hat, your body, your legs, your boots, unless they're like a class-specific iconic quest or whatever, there are a handful of those. In general, they're all going to be just gathering gear. And that means when you're like, you know what, I want to level botany. Great, do it. You're going to go chop down trees, pick some stuff from plants. As I'm leveling, what am I doing for gear? Oh yeah, you can have all that gear from miner. And then if you're doing your class quests and it's dropping more gear, you can pick slots that you didn't pick the first time. So each time you level, it just gets easier. And when you're using materials and stuff, like there are materials crafted by other classes. So there's things that you would have to buy from other players along the way, that as you have more of them leveled, you don't have to do that anymore. As you have more of your gatherers leveled, you can go gather your own materials. So you have more options. But other than that, like, it's all the same path. You're getting them all to cap in roughly the same way, and you're doing it through these turn-ins. And this big city thing is one of the best, if not the best, source of experience for these jobs. And so that's what you're doing. You're just doing that all the way to cap. But it's this whole system. You've got full left side, right side gear. You've got things you can slot to improve that. You've got so many ways to kind of improve this system, and that's gathering in 14. How did WoW deal with it? Because you can't make somebody level through all this stuff, because they're going to have to go gather all the materials from the different expansions. You know what? We won't speed it up because we want each expansion to still matter. We're going to silo each expansion off. So we're going to say, okay, how many levels do we think sums up what we want to do with the professions in that thing? And that's how many levels that expansion will have. So your crafter, your gatherer, has like a whole bunch of different experience bars from each expansion. And you learn your recipes, not as you go, just handed to you for free, because the system has enough engaging stuff on its end. The recipes is the engaging part, because the crafting itself is what 14 would call auto-synth. There are no abilities where there's this whole mini game of crafting an item and seeing if you can get it to high quality and how much experience you can squeak out of it, and do you lose your materials, and there's all these ramifications. It's like I click it and it has a cast bar that takes a certain amount of time, and then I get the item. That's it. There might be cooldowns to determine for me from making something more than once per day or something like that, but that's about it. Recipes is where it's engaging, and recipes is done by your battle classes. It's go kill this boss till this recipe drops. Go grind this beast tribe, faction, reputation, whatever you want to call that, until you have enough rep to buy this from the vendor. Go turn this item in as a form of token until you have enough to buy all the different things that they sell from the vendor. It's really not very complex. This recipe drops randomly across these set of mobs, and it's tradable. And so go buy that off the market board, the auction house, and from another player. And depending on how rare that recipe is, it could be pricey. So there are a number of ways to get recipes, and the harder the recipe to get is, and the better and more useful the item is, which could be like it makes something really cosmetically beautiful, or it makes a mount. Like, depending on how in demand that item is, that determines the value, or the how worthwhile it is to go grind it if it's something that can't be traded. The Vial of the Sands recipe can't be traded, and it's just a grind, and it's incredibly valuable. So you can kind of rate, okay, well, how many hours would it take, and then how much money am I going to make? Okay, that's something I want to go do. That's something I want to go take part in. Best of luck. So like that's where the system happens. On its own, it's like getting to cap in Shadowlands is I buy a bunch of materials off the auction house, and then I tell it to auto-synth every item that gives me experience up to a point, and then I go to the vendor and I purchase all of the vendor recipes because it has enough to level you through most or all of each expansion, and then I do that, and then I go again and I craft up more of that stuff, and then I craft again, and then I'm at cap. And somewhere along the way, the recipes may get too expensive for my blood and I may stop, or somewhere along the way, there may be another way to like kind of extend your skill beyond there. It may transition out of that. They just added the first relics to Final Fantasy XIV for crafters and gatherers. We just got those this expansion, Sky Steel tools. And so that's where you kind of have like a legendary type thing. In WoW, they call those tools of the trade. They're much later in an expansion, so Shadowlands won't have them yet. And in 14, it's one more thing to do, and they're better statted. And there's some expert recipe stuff that like you have to kind of get into with that. In WoW, it like breaks your crafting or gathering in some way. So it like gives your enchants a chance to like, I think give multiple or something is what it's done in the past. Or when on your tailor, when you're out gathering, you like find more cloth. And so like, cause you go kill humanoids to gather cloth. And so like it just does these things that like augment it so that you have a very distinct advantage over other people of that profession. And it's a quest line to get there. You have to go do this thing, you know, maybe go gather a couple items, kill a guy, turn some stuff in, right? Like you just kind of work your way through it. Sky Steel Tools is not that different. So those are shockingly similar systems that are added kind of to extend the life of the professions beyond the initial serving and of expansion, because Sky Steel Tools were not available on day one. So that's something that was added later in the expansion. We just are later in that expansion. So the tools of the trade are kind of a one-time thing. They drop later in the expansion, and then you have them or you don't. Sky Steel Tools is a continually upgrading item. So you're going to get it, and then each half patch you're going to have a chance to kind of make it relevant again, because your crafter gear is going to go up in max level through things because there's a gear progression for crafting. And then from there, like, it's just a question of what do you do crafting for? In World of Warcraft, raid consumables are a big consumer. Gearing up alts is a big consumer. Cosmetics is a big consumer. And you can have up to 10,000 items listed. They may have lifted that. I think they lifted that. You can have like an unlimited number of items listings on the auction house, and then each listing can be up to a stack of 10,000. And so like the market board takes as much as you want, and there are add-ons to help you handle that and help you remember what prices you want to set for what items based on the current market conditions. You say, okay, if these were the market conditions, this is what I'd want you to do. And it's like, that's fine, I'll just do it. And so there's add-ons to like help you manage that, where your intentions can be spread over thousands of items if you want it to be. And that's really the goal. And so you're just constantly selling things. In 14, selling things is a little clunkier, so this isn't really meant to be an auction house versus market board, but like you can only sell 20 items per retainer. A default account allows you to get 2 retainers, and then you can add more to your account by paying money. It's like an extra $1 per month per retainer, and you can have up to, I think, 10 or something. I don't know. So I have 4. And that pushes my retainer up just a little bit. That pushes my monthly subscription up just a bit. And so I can have 80 items listed. Retainers have other value as well. It's what determines like your bank slots, and then they're also kind of your command table for WoW players. So there's some other things going on there. And they have their own leveling and their own gear. And so think from command table standpoint, it's probably much closer to like WoD, where like it's kind of almost cumbersome. But you should do it because the loot's good. And so you kind of push people through that, and like you sell it all, but remember that once I have a piece of tanking gear, I can share it across all my tanks. And so, like, depending on your gear, like, you kind of get pushed into making only the highest quality stuff, or only things where the game might have, like, a gap in gear. So, like, not everything sells all the time. And remember, every crafter you're selling to, you might be able to sell the materials needed from one crafter for another crafter, but you're not going to make enormous margin, because if it was enormous margin, they would just do it themselves, because everybody can be everything without having multiple alts. They can just make all the crafters. They can have one battle class and all the crafters. And they can all be sharing the same crafter gear. And so, like, it's just, okay, that's really fast. And so, you know, they can repair their own gear, so you don't have, like, that's one of the reasons people do it, is once you have all your crafters leveled, you can actually repair all the... A crafter can repair the gear of its slot type, so once you have all your crafters leveled, you can repair all gear. And in WoW, you would need, like, you have to drop, like a hammer for that or something to repair, like a anvil or a vendor of some kind. You can drop vendors out in the world. So, like, there's things you can do to repair out when you're out adventuring. But in 14, like, everybody repairs just themselves. So every, like, savage in-game raider would need their crafters leveled to repair themselves, or else your group is occasionally going to have to back out and go to vendors to repair, because you can't repair other people. At least not yet. So really, it's mostly selling cosmetics, and it's selling things for, like, people's player housing. It's and then it's gearing up at endgame, because in endgame crafting is relevant. So in endgame in WoW, there is a component of legendaries this time that is relevant, but people have been so keen to level their crafters early expansion that, like, a lot of times that's being sold below cost, and so that's kind of weird. And yeah, in 14 that's not really the case. So, you know, when I talked about gearing in my last video, the gearing that takes place in games, that's a high profit driver in 14. And in WoW, crafted gear can only do so much for you in this expansion. If we talk about the past, then everything's on the table. But, like, in this expansion, if you get behind in gear, or if you have a lot of money and you want to progress quickly or whatever, you can spend money to progress your battle classes eye level to a point, of course, in 14. And in WoW, like, that's only going to get you so far. That's before we talk about, like, helping out leveling people, and then the fact that you can craft an item, and then there's another item you can craft that'll, like, down level that item so that it can be equipped sooner, or up level an item if the recipe is low level so that they can be equipped later. The crafting system gets really weird in WoW, because they had to adjust it for the new leveling process. So the new leveling process broke a bunch of stuff, and so they have some solutions that are integrated into the game to help with that. Mostly the WoW system is point and click. Mostly it is literally, if you have the recipe, and you have the materials, you click go, and then it just makes them. And it's why when I'm on a crafting stream, in the top of my screen, WoW is doing a vendor shuffle where it is crafting thousands and thousands and thousands of capes, and then it is selling them to a vendor, hundreds at a time. And it's just doing that over and over and over and over. And every time I run out of materials, I run over to my mailbox where I have thousands of materials waiting, and I pull out some materials, and then I go again. And on 14, that's where my focus is, because, like, I have to write out macros, or I have to play this whole mini game, and it's a whole process. Now, the community, of course, has made a lot of those macros public, so, like, within a reasonable thing, like, there's tools out there, like, if you don't want to engage with it, that make it feel more automatic. But, like, there is a system there. So you have to actively try to bypass it, just like going out and finding somebody that wrote a macro for your DPS rotation. It's probably going to be suboptimal. And by probably, it definitely is suboptimal. If you're using a macro to control any part of, like, oh, this casts this spell, then this spell, then this spell, there's a very good chance that you're trimming something out of it. You're missing something. And when you do that in crafting, there's a term called condition, and the item is, like, changing condition throughout the craft, and you're supposed to be responding to that, and a macro can't. And so, like, a macro is suboptimal right from the get-go in crafting 100% of the time. But when you're, like, leveling and you're like, okay, I need to make about 200 of these, and I want to make them without auto-synthing, okay, well, a macro is a good way to go. Just be aware that you're not squeaking out the max condition that you could be. So that's really it. That's, like, a general summary of what crafting is. It is Thursday, and Thursday afternoon, And so I have Friday morning, Friday afternoon posts, and they'll be into the weekend. I'm really hoping to get A Realm Revoiced up. I'm hoping to get episodes 3 and 4 uploaded. Working on it, and then I'm gonna keep streaming, and then we'll be going into the weekend, and yeah, that'll be good once those are up, and then we're into next week. Monday, I'll have my announcement video. Just keep in mind you're gonna be seeing ads on all these videos now because YouTube had the right to be serving them before they would have to give me a piece, but like I haven't seen a lot of that. They had made an announcement they're allowed to, but I haven't seen a lot of it. At this point, it said, hey, congratulations, you've cleared the threshold. Do you want to get paid by YouTube? And I said yes, and it's like, great, we're going to put a bunch of ads on your videos now. And it's like, okay, like you do what you have to do, and then that will help me do all of this. So thank you guys for all the support. Thanks for hitting subscribe. Thanks for hanging out with me on stream. It's been a blast to get to hang out with you guys in a more live setting. I like this because we don't have to be on the same timetable. We don't have to be in the same month or year to interact in YouTube comments. Like there's all this stuff going on, and like that's neat. But there is something different about live, and I really appreciate everybody that has the ability to come over and hang out over there. So have a great day. Thanks for listening to me talk about gaming, kinda.